you're going to cap out. On a long enough timeline, you will cap out potential if you have a fixed mindset. But when you have a growth mindset, for lack of a better term, the sky is the limit, my friends. And you hear that terminology, fake it till you make it. I abundantly disagree with that. I think you have to make it until you make it, until you get to this point in life in which your actions thus then become your reality. And within that, what starts to happen is you realize your goals. But there's a part of you, and I want to go a little bit deeper here, where your identity doesn't want to change, and it wants to create and resist your goals. And I loved what you said about pushing through that, but I really want to deep dive into that. What does that really mean to like get your identity out of your own way?
So that's the fourth step of the magnetic mind method, and we call it a mental magnetic mind method recode. So it's a recoding. I want you to think about Windows 10, right? Windows 10 or iOS runs your computer, your iPad, your laptop. We have no idea how these devices work. There's an operating system. We push the power button, they come on. We hopefully do some productive work with these devices. Every once in a while, they push an update down to that device. You install the update, you restart the machine, and now the machine is going to work in a different way. Our subconscious program is the same way. We need to do an update, and what I'm suggesting in the magnetic mind method is that we come from the superconscious side. And we have to create, step 2 is a structural tension between what we want and the way it is now, what we'd love and the way it is now. And it's not judgmental. It's just, this is what I'd love to have. This is the way it is now, because the mind likes to resolve tension. So we create a structural tension in the mind between our true choice and the way it is now. We get into the emotion of the end result. That's step 3. Meaning, what does it feel like to have what you would love to have? And I didn't say what are you going to be doing. I asked what it felt like. This is the emotional end result. What does it feel like to be that person that's taking that action, that person that's doing those things? Like some people say, well, I want to drive a Ferrari. I'd be driving a Ferrari if I had all the money in the world. Well, I don't care about the Ferrari. I want to know what it feels like to drive the Ferrari, right? So getting into that state. And then step 4 is we're asking superconscious, do you see what we want? Again, this is that highest version of yourself that has been with you all of your life, that is connected into the infinite field of possibilities, knows all things, has all wisdom. You don't have to inform it of anything that's ever happened to you because it was there when it was happening. It knows everything. This highest version of yourself that I'm going to refer to as superconscious. We ask superconscious, do you see what I want? And then do you see the resistance that's in the way? The resistance is going to be the identity, that aspect of your personality, the aspect of your identity that you're either conscious or unconscious to, that is in the way of you having what you want. We ask superconscious to do a recode, to do a massive change history in the perfect way, in the perfect order, to just recode those decisions that have been made in the past that control the current reality today. And when we do that, the identity shifts. So from not being good enough, moving towards being good enough, from not being worthy to being worthy, from not being capable to being capable, insignificant to significant, perfect, not perfect enough to being perfect enough, from not belonging to belonging. Any resistance, and we go through the family history, we go, the science tells us that family history can be passed down up to 7 generations through the DNA, and it can affect our current reality. So again, this seems super psychic and woo-woo and out there. I just need you to park your skeptic mind for a moment and just say, could this be possible? I can give you all the resources of the science that have been done. You can explore that to your heart's content. But for the purpose of this conversation right now, just think for a second that it would be possible. And your superconscious, with the help of a coach, with the help of some guidance, can recode that subconscious where you actually feel the shift. And it feels like just being lighter, less resistance to the true choice. And then the 5th step after you do a recode is to think, what is the next obvious action I need to take now?
In the consideration of the inundation of all the chaos of the world that we live in right now, with all the information, all the data, all the everything, how do you get quiet enough with yourself to learn how to listen to yourself?
That's a really great question. And I'll kind of do a sidebar on the answer. When I wrote Zen Athlete, I'd done peak performance and mindset and work with all these top level athletes. And my thought was, well, I can kind of Trojan horse self-mastery and educate children, because if they know this as kids, if they know the power of all this stuff as children, they're going to be able to take that into their lives. And so when I was thinking about how I would educate, a grade 1 class or a grade 2 class, I broke it down into this example, and it said, okay, you're going to do a free throw. Well, the first thing before shooting the free throw is to take a few deep breaths and calm your mind. A person who knows how to calm and quiet their mind, it is a fundamental and monumental distinction in the quality of your consciousness and the quality of your life to be able to have that tiny little gap there. It is massive. And it's a massive difference in your free will and a massive difference in your freedom and how you navigate life. The second thing is teach them to visualize a shot going in. And what that does is says, hey, you influence your reality. You're powerful. If you intend something, if you visualize something, you're going to increase the probability of your success. There's force that's around you. Number 3 is you miss the shot. So if you miss the shot, what's the most powerful and positive perspective you can have? So it's not always going to be, life is not successful. It's a series of infinite failures, but how do you respond to those failures? And finally, the Zen aspect, or the mastery aspect is, can you be whole and complete and full of self-love and harmonious in the process? And so one of the examples I give is like, my daughter's 2 now, is she good enough when she's 2, or is she good enough when she's 4? Is she good enough when she's 10? Is she good enough when she goes into high school? Is she good enough when she gets into university, or when she graduates? Is she good enough when she starts her first business, or gets her first job, or gets her first raise? And somewhere along this line, we're supposed to be adults, right? We're supposed to be, now we've got to figure it out, and we're no longer children. But really, we are children. I've interviewed people who are 90 years old, had tons of life experiences, and we're eternal students. And the wiser you get, the less you actually know. You only know a little bit of a little bit. And so can you be harmonious with wherever you are in the process, whether you're 12 or 25 or 46 or 54 or whatever the case is, because it's ongoing and it's never ending. We have this impulse to grow. And so as far as quieting the mind, there are so many ways to do it. There's infinite courses. Just do 3 deep breaths. That's one thing you can do. Just do 3 deep breaths. Just if you want to go out in nature, go for a walk somewhere quiet. Your mind is going to kind of go nuts, but that's okay too. There's so many breakthroughs in music, in binaural beats, and all these different tools you can use. So you can just do something like that. So we don't need to overcomplicate it. It's not about going into some mystical land, although it does happen if you practice quite a bit. Just use something nice and simple that you resonate with, and do it as a practice. But you need to learn how to quiet the mind and have this little space before you respond. And that's what separates us from animals. Animals are just instinctual, but for us, we have this gap of choice, right? Somebody says, hey, you're a bearded fool, I hate you. I could be like, well, F you, whatever, and throw a stick at them. Or I can just wait a second, have a breath, and then choose my response in that scenario.
And I'm wondering how much of these physical endeavors that you've put yourself through is based in that. And if I'm off base, I'd love to talk about it, because I want to know what that is. Like, what is it that drives someone to suffer in the way that you have physically?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great concept. And I do, it does really resonate with me, because, I'm sure that everyone has this to a certain degree, and everyone that's listening, if you don't agree with me, then you're living in denial. But we oftentimes will beat ourselves up at work, in relationships, with friends, and whatever situation, because we think it's what we should do, or we think it's what's expected of us, or we've been told we need to do it that way by our parents or our boss or our spouse or whatever, right? And it's like, if we're overachieving, if we're driven, even if we're driven out of fear or failure or whatever, then we're going to try to accomplish that thing, whatever that thing is. But in the end, it is a little bit empty, because unless it's the thing that we really wanted, like where you could say, it's not for a charity, I'm not getting a sticker, nobody's watching me, nobody's taking my picture and posting it on some website saying, look what Michael did, right? if you're just doing it for you, that's a very powerful, empowering, wonderful thing. Because like I wrote about this in my book, Winning in the Middle of the Pack, how great is it to know that nobody's watching and nobody cares? I mean, that's a very freeing thing, because then it means I'm doing it for me. And if it's not important enough, don't do it. It's fine, because nobody cares and nobody's watching anyway. But if it's important to you to find out what you're made of, then it's like it's freeing that nobody cares, that nobody's watching, that you don't get a medal, that it's nothing other than to see what I'm made of. And it's mind-boggling. For me, it's a little more like, for you, it's more power and strength and endurance and fast twitch and that kind of stuff. For me, I found a little more meditation in the longer, slower stuff. And I remember I had to rewire my brain to be able to settle into that mindset. So super quick, I'm getting ready to do a 50-mile run, one of the first 50-mile runs that I've done, and it's held the last weekend in June in Vegas. It's called Running with the Devil. Okay, 121 degrees. That's what the high with that day was going to be. And I raced to the start line. I'm a few minutes late. I'm cursing myself. I'm such an idiot. I jump out of the car. I get to the start line, and I start running. And the first quarter mile is like straight uphill. And I'm like, really? Like, seriously, you're going to make us run uphill for a quarter mile? And then I look at my watch, and it's like 91 degrees at 6 a.m. And I'm like, 6:05 a.m. I'm like, really? Like, what, has to be this hot? And I started going, dude, nobody paid you to be here. Like what? Change your attitude. Like, get a different perspective. Because honestly, if you go home, nobody's caring. Nobody's going to care. Nobody's watching you. Stop being a whiny bitch and just do it. If you want to do it, change your perspective. And then I said to myself, Michael, I go, perspective, huh? I wonder what that means, to change your perspective. And I had this self-talk with myself, super deep, meditative self-talk with myself. And about 4 hours later, Michael, I hit the turnaround, 25 miles. And I went, holy shit. I just spent like 4+ hours thinking about one word, perspective, and how you could change it, how you could apply it to yourself, and blah, 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 blah. And I had this like beautiful self-talk thing where I go, man, you could accomplish whatever you want to accomplish if you're doing it for the right reasons.
Who are listening right now to join a conference, join a group, get a coach, be a part of something that you're uncomfortable in, because that's where you're going to grow. And I also think like you build diverse relationships in that.
Yeah.
What kind of relationships have you built over the years through your willingness to think bigger?
Oh my God. I mean, one of the things that I'm most proud about is the fact that every single day I get to build this incredible company that we call Streamline Podcasts with 3 other co-founders and very dear friends of mine. And that came about as a result of really moving on this personal development journey, right? So I discovered the podcast platform in my corporate career. Being a sales rep, there's a lot of windshield time. And one day I was like, all right, there's only so much rap music. There's only so much of this future mixtape I can continue to listen to. Like, let me try to, expound upon, the possibilities out there to try to get some knowledge, right? While I'm driving all over the country. And so I discovered podcasts, and I was consuming. And, I learned about what success really means. And I define success based upon how many people you can serve. And coincidentally, man, I became recognized within the organization at that time as somebody that, was doing well. And I was given opportunities to train, some of my colleagues and counterparts in sales, because I was just consuming all this information. And so I got to a place one day where I was like, man, I can only do so many of these one-on-one calls. Why not launch a podcast and start to put some of this information out there just to make it more readily available and accessible? The problem was I didn't really know how to do my own podcast. So what I did was I went and found a coach who had a mastermind and brought people together that also aspired to learn how to podcast, in order to learn some of these intangibles, right, that would probably just take me exponentially that much more time. And so, boom, dropped into a new room. I'm feeling the discomfort. I'm feeling the imposter syndrome, all the things that you just talked about. But I'm sticking with it because I see this vision of what a greater version of Karl Sona could be. And in just being myself, right, and staying plugged in, I met a couple of people that I just really hit it off with, man, that were also trying to figure it out. And we started to support each other. We started having more and more conversations. You know, this goes back to my previous point of changing your circle, getting into some new rooms of folks that are also wired the same way that you are. Because what happens is momentum starts to really accelerate, right? And we started to figure out, oh, wow, like we're having some similar type challenges around launching podcasts. We're having similar challenges around actually getting them produced and edited, in a quality manner. I wonder if there's something we can do together, right, to create a solution that helps other people like ourselves. And that's where Streamline Media was birthed. And I always tell my partners, that if we all weren't willing to put ourselves out there, in terms of finding other people that were interested in the things that we wouldn't be able to serve all of the incredible creators and business owners that we now do today. I mean, here's a more practical example, Michael. You and I were introduced through our mutual friend, Jerome Myers, right? Shout out to him. I met Jerome because he was a client referred to us, right, for back-end post-production work of this podcast. And so again, if I didn't take this leap of faith for myself to try to figure this thing out, the company would have never been formed because I wouldn't have ever met my partners. I wouldn't have ever met Jerome, who's now become literally one of my best friends. He's literally standing up in my wedding, right? And I wouldn't have been introduced to you and all the other incredible people that are now a part of my network. So I tell that story because it's all about one domino, right, that sets off this chain effect. We all know the domino effect sort of analogy, but you don't ever get to see how the chain creates real significant value that sets you up if you're not willing to lean into the fear or lean into, what it is you need to do to position yourself for something different. And it goes back to that conversation that I had with myself in the mirror in Nashville. So